What's going on, For Joy fam? Welcome back to another episode of the For Joy podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Chu. For our new listeners out there, we interview interesting people who've accomplished some amazing things all around something that they love, something that brings them joy, something that makes them smile. We hope that you guys find these stories inspiring and you can take that inspiration and go pinpoint something in your life that brings you joy, or introduce something into your life that brings you joy and makes you happy, and experience that as frequently as possible. I'm a big believer that the more frequently you experience joy in your life, the higher quality your life will be. I'm super excited about my guest today. I discovered him on TikTok about a month ago. I find his content incredibly profound, thoughtful, motivational. I have a couple topics I don't want to go deep with him on, but I'd like to welcome to the show Donovan Beck. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Of course. So for our listeners who aren't familiar with you, what is it exactly that you do?
So hi, my name is Donovan. What I say is that I'm a photographer, filmmaker, writer, and just general human being who likes to make things. I'm an artist. I'm a storyteller. On TikTok specifically, I've been known as a writer and a poet, basically. I share spoken word poetry in my art style, which is a sort of film and soft and emotional feel, which I really love. And outside of that, I work as a DP and creative here in Los Angeles, as well as a mental health advocate for schools across the state of California. So I have my hands in lots of things, but at the end of the day, I always say I'm a storyteller, and I just find ways to share the stories that are most impactful to me, and they're normally around mental health and wellness and creativity and art. So yeah, do a lot.
I found, I think your content popped up on my For You page, but it immediately spoke to me. It's there's that video about that blew up for you. I think it has like 11 million views.
Yeah, a friendly reminder. I think it was on another interview yesterday. I think it's nearing 12 million right now.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
So I've gone through your feed and you touch on a few different topics. Is there an overall kind of message that you're trying to convey to people, or is this like kind of you have a thought at a particular moment, you record yourself talking about it? What is it?
So my art is specifically around things that I experience. So everything I share is a part of me. Every piece of writing, every film, every photograph, every poem are all parts of my life, and they're all things that I experience. And so for me, as someone who struggled with anxiety and depression basically my entire life, a lot of my life is based around like understanding myself in the context of this very weird world that we live in. And so having struggled with that, I share art as a way to outlet a lot of my thoughts in my brain, especially with TikTok. What it became was I got on TikTok because I lost a bet to my friend who said that I needed to start posting some more of my art and more of my creations. He wanted me to post it on there. And then what he eventually came is when I record my TikToks and when I'm making those pieces, I actually just sit here in my room. I like to joke that the whole internet's seen my room at this point, which is a little bit crazy. But I sit here in my room for about an hour or so and kind of just talk into the void and talk into the camera and just think about life really, and share my pieces that way. And for me, everything I write has something to do with things I've experienced. So love and loss and heartbreak and learning to like be okay with who I am and what I experience. A friendly reminder is literally a poem written about just reminding myself that I've never viewed myself the way that people see me. And I think that's something that we all experience. And I think that's why it connected so many people together, is because we all know that. We just need to be reminded of it sometimes. That every single time we look in the mirror, we see ourselves in photographs or anything like that, we're seeing a version of ourselves that we're so used to and we criticize over and over and over again, versus when I see people that I love and that I appreciate, I view them in this very beautiful way and I think they're amazing. And so a friendly reminder was written for me as a reply to myself to remember that I don't see myself the same way that people who care about me do. And that's how I write all my poems, and all my work is based around things that I experience. One of my other favorite poems that I've shared on TikTok is Dear Anxiety, which is a poem just written to my anxiety attacks, like to my panic attacks, as a kind of reply to say, like, this is what I'm going to do when you try to show up in my life. And so everything I do is based around that. So if there's an overarching theme of all my work, I like to say it's just the existence of life. I write about things that we all experience, but we never have the words to put it together. And I think that's why people connect with my work so much, is that I do my best to put words and examples to the things that we all feel, but never know how to explain.
I think it takes a lot of like deep thinking and really it's self-awareness to come to those thoughts. You said with a friendly reminder that, it's something that we're aware of and that we need to be reminded of. I guarantee you there's a lot of people who've never even thought about that. I guarantee you that there's so many people out there in the world and that probably listened to that message, and that's why it resonated with so many people. It's like, holy crap, he's right. I've never seen myself how all of these people that I'm concerned about all these people's thoughts of me. I have never seen myself how they see me, and it's pretty bizarre.
Yeah, so many people had messaged me about it, just saying like, I never thought about that, or never understood that that's how it is. And like, especially with just the idea of it, like people would message me like, oh, what about video? And as someone who I work in the video sphere at all times, I'm like, yeah, but you're still conscious of that. Like you're aware when you're being filmed, and you're aware when there's being a photograph, or when you're looking yourself in the mirror, you're aware of yourself in that moment, versus when you're writing or when you're dancing with friends or anything like that, when you're so unaware of yourself. I think that's when people are the most beautiful, and that's when I think I find the most beauty in people. And so we never get to see that of ourselves, which is a crazy idea and crazy thought. And I think that was where the intention behind the friendly reminder came from, was just being aware of that.
When did you start kind of down this path that let's just call it self-awareness, like realizing these thoughts, pondering these thoughts? When did you start this journey?
A mixture of things. So a long time ago, like I said, I've struggled with anxiety and depression my whole life. I've moved a lot as a kid. My dad was military, so I bounced around pretty often. So I've always been really conscious of myself. Because of moving so much, you kind of are always the new kid. So you kind of are always like placing yourself in situations, making friends and all that sort of stuff. So you're always kind of aware. And then with dealing with anxiety and depression, dealing with like all that sort of stuff, you start to think a lot. You're with yourself a lot and inside of your head. And normally it's a really destructive mindset, where you're inside your head being destructive to yourself over and over and over again. And for me, I think after just a lot of pain and a lot of loss and a lot of recovering, I eventually said that I want to enjoy this life. I want to live this life. I want to be a part of this life. And I want to experience it all. And so to do that, you had to really focus in on the things that make this world beautiful. So like when I work with people and they ask me, how do I get into writing? How do I get into photography or filmmaking? I tell them to look for the little things, to be amazed by the small things in life. And as a filmmaker and a photographer, I'm constantly looking for all those things. I'm looking for everything about this world that is incredible. And then I share it. And so for me, my path down to being really conscious of myself kind of became from, I'm tired of feeling all this pain. And I know that there's a reason to be here. And I know that there's so much of this world that I need to be appreciative of and I need to love. I'm just not looking for it. So I need to start looking. And so I think that's where, and with a mixture of like beginning daily journaling, beginning writing, and just finding ways to get all of these thoughts that were inside of my head outward, that's when I started to learn to appreciate a lot of what this world has to offer.
You do like meditation, or is this more of like you're just kind of looking at the world constantly? What's like exactly your approach?
I do a lot of things. So I do daily meditation every single day. I do it in the morning. And then I also daily journal every single day. And I've done that for, if you were able to see my library wall over here, about 2 shelves of it are actually just journals that are gifted to me by my friends and that I bought. And they're just full of writing and mixtures of things. And so I've done that for the better part of like 3.5 going on 4 years now. Every single day and every single evening. And it's really awesome because I can look back on any day of my life in the past 4 years to the T, which is really cool. But I think in general, I just go at the world with this very, what I always like to call this childhood mindset. In the film industry, we have a term that says shoot it at the waist, which basically means when we shoot films, we often shoot them at waist level, aiming upward. For the specific reason of that sight line, like that view of the world, reminds you innately of when you were a kid, when everything was really, really big and really, really wondrous and these super amazing things. So we shoot films that way to make things look huge and to make them feel amazing. And so I've taken that into my life and viewed the world with this very childhood mindset. Of just being amazed by it all, and learning from that and being able to experience that. So do I have daily practices that help me do things like that? Yeah. But I also I always like to say that people who have experienced anxiety and depression, which I think a lot of us have this really innate appreciation for the world. It isn't the fact that we hate the world. It's the fact that we love it so much, we're so hurt by it at times. And so I've learned to just experience it all and be part of it all as much as I can.
Is it hate or is it fear of the world?
I feel like it's a mixture. I think people misinterpret fear into hate. When we're so often I get asked questions like, are you scared of dying? I think we all are. And I think that's why we try to do so many things to prove that we're not going to die. The existence of like social media is this long-term immortality project, right? Where it is us putting our stamp on the world saying that we're good, we are here, we were here, we were here. And so I think people misinterpret that at times of this fear. So I think the best way I can explain this is I work in the field of mental health, right? The feeling of fear and the feeling of excitement in our body are the 2 same feelings, just interpreted in different ways. And so when we are able to shift away from fear, which fear can devolve into hatred and angst and all these sort of things, when we shift it away into excitement, the things that scare us the most often can excite us the most, can make us feel and want to experience things. It's why people are adrenaline junkies. It's why people jump out of airplanes. It's why like skiers and snowboarders go down like these massive hills that are unpaved. They are scared of it. They fear it and they're super scared of it. But that's the excitement. And that's the thing that we chase. That's the ability to remind us that we're here. And I think that's where I make that realization is when we're able to shift our view away from fear or hatred or feeling like we're being attacked by the world, we can then shift our body into this really part of ourselves that wants to go at it and wants to go and chasing into the world, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's funny that you brought it up. That's actually a key difference in characteristic about an Olympian versus like a traditional person is, I think I was listening to an interview about a high diver. I don't even know if that's what they're called, but the guys that jump off those giant platforms. And when they look down, they're excited. They're excited to go do it. And then it's like a hair difference between another person who looks down and they just want to pee their pants. You know, it's like such a subtle difference, but that difference is the difference between a normal person and an Olympian, which I think is incredible. So has this practice for the past 4 years that you've been, this path that you've been going down, has it helped with any of the fear and the anxiety that you historically had experienced?
Absolutely. Especially people have asked me, like, what is it like daily journaling for 4 years straight? And I tell them it's amazing because you never really understand the length of time until you look at it in the past, right? we don't understand how long a year is. On average, not every journal has over 365 pages. It normally has like 150. So that means that every 2 journals in there is a year, and every single page is a single day. And that for me is incredible. And for me, it's actually more because I double it. I do morning and night. So normally there's like 4 to 5 different journals for a singular year. There's so much that happens in those years. Most people don't like reading books that are over 365 pages long. And that in of itself is saying something. And so for me, I love it because I can see growth. I can go back to a day of heartbreak and look at it 2-3 years in the future and be able to laugh and smile about it and say, like, I've grown so much from there. I'm able to look at the day where I really first dived into my business as an artist and the fear that was written in those pages of, I don't know if this is going to work. And then look at it 4 years in the future and just look at it and say, it did. And for me, that ability is really, really amazing because you're able to remember. I think we live in the past as a anxiety piece. When we think of our past, we think of the things that have hurt us. We think of the things that have where our fears today come from and everything like that. But we can look at the past in this really nostalgic way of, yeah, this kid 4 years ago who was thinking about becoming an artist and all the fear that he wrote inside of this book, you've done nearly everything you wrote that you wished you could do, which is amazing and really exciting. And so for me, I've always looked at it that way of when we start living more presently, when we start being able to experience ourselves here, the things that scared us in the past don't scare us anymore. When I work with students, I tell them that anxiety and depression are found in 2 very unique features in time, either past tense or future tense. And so we have a fear of the past, the abuse, the anxieties, the things that went wrong in our past. So we never want to do them again, and they scare us. And then the future, we're scared of growing up. We're scared of paying bills. I don't know what I'm doing in my future. I don't know if I'll have a job, all these sort of things. So we're scared of the future. Where we normally don't see anxiety and depression show up as much, and the feelings involved is when we're present, when we're here, and we're focused on being here. And so for me, my writing and the things that I do and the practices of going on walks and just looking at life is a way for me to not chase the past and not chase the future, but be here presently. And then if I ever want to come back to those days and I ever want to be nostalgic about those starting moments, I have this shelf full of all those moments, which is really cool for me.
That's incredible. Everything that you just said, I'm a big believer of. I've personally have been on this. I don't even know if this term is correct, but like a spiritual kind of transformation I would say about 3 years ago. I was probably on the periphery of spirituality for the past 10 years, understood the vague generalities of it, but really kind of had an experience about 3 years ago that made me want to pursue it. Like, it consumed my life for a minute there. And now it's just kind of like a daily practice. I have my certain things that I do. But everything that you speak about, I'm a big believer in. It kind of makes me feel silly, like the past version of myself, how consumed I was with stuff that just really didn't matter. The past, the past and the future stuff, because you just don't have any control over it. The only control you have over is the present moment, and you can choose to either enjoy it or you can choose to torture yourself by thinking about the past or the future. So, I really connect with that. Amor fati, the love of fate.
Yep.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you believe in fate or free will, or do you think it's a hybrid?
I think it's a hybrid. So I like the term beautiful serendipity. So there are people in my life that I have met and ran into and moments that I've been a part of that can only be described as beautiful serendipity, where it is 2 very long paths of life, 10, 15, 20 years of life coming together at a singular moment. And some people will view this as love. Some people can view this as moments of opportunity, any things like that. The odds of all that happening are incredibly, incredibly slim. So whether it is me running into who I consider my best friend today, or an opportunity to work with some of the companies that I've gotten to work with simply because of a coffee shop conversation, some of the clients that I've gotten to take photos of simply because I saw them passing and I decided to walk up to them. That deciding to walk up to them is where free will comes into place. Amor fati is the love of fate. Fate will come into your life. You have the choice to love it or not. And so when moments like that, when people like that, when these moments of beautiful serendipity happen, where everything and all the possibilities come into play and put you in a situation that you can make a choice of whether to say something to them, whether to take the opportunity, whether to walk up and get out of your comfort zone and go into these moments, that is amor fati. That is the love of fate. That is when miracles are happening and your free will comes into play, where you're able to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to say hello, I'm going to introduce myself. So I think it's a mixture. I think it's a hybrid where the world, the universe, God, whatever you want to say, will put these moments into your life. It is then your choice of what to do with it or what not to do with it. And that's what I've always viewed amor fati as, is the love of fate, is the love of chasing after these beautiful serendipity moments.
Yeah, I think my viewpoint on it is, I think people are born into certain situations, and obviously their bodies, and they're predisposed to certain thought patterns, maybe physical features influence certain things about them. I think if you stay on autopilot, there's a relatively predictable path that that person would go down, and you could call that fate. I think that when people become more aware and their desires start to grow and they take active pursuit of those desires, that's when free will starts to step in, and your predetermined fate that you used to be on might be a little bit different now, because you're exercising that free will to pursue something that's outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, 100%. When it comes to, like, people ask me, what is my background, right? What is my background, and how did I end up becoming an artist? How did I end up sharing and being this open about sharing all these stories? And I laugh because everything in my background does not add up to here. My father was Air Force. My father served 22 years in the Air Force, and now works at JPL for NASA. So he's the chief of cybersecurity at JPL. My mother's a nurse and was a medical assistant for 15 years and is now in nursing and cardiac radiology. My brother has a degree in biomedicine and works within the United States Air Force as a medic. And then my sister is getting her paralegal license and works with the District of Orange County. I chose to take photos for a living. So nothing added up. But there was a point in my life where I realized that the stories that I experience and the stories that I share and that I want to share, and being able to be a voice for people like me, kids who look like me, people who don't traditionally go into the arts and things like that, that I could be a voice for all of that, I decided to lean into it and lean hard and continue to do what I do today. And so every fabric of my being is around showing people that art is a possibility and that creatives have a space in this world, and that there are stories that need to be heard and need to be shared. And there are voices that have been systematically not allowed to share those stories, and they need to be. And so my entire art and everything that I do is based around those principles. And I leaned hard and I leaned into it, even though there obviously were conversations with a lot of my family about, this is not possible. You can't do this. This isn't sustainable, anything like that. And there's still those conversations, and they're still learning and experiencing a lot of what I'm experiencing as well. But like you said, sometimes you have to view what is disposed to you, but then lean into what you know is best.
Has this kind of trajectory on TikTok changed any of their thoughts on it? And to follow up on that, does it give you hope that maybe I could be more successful than my siblings with this whole art thing.
So a lot of my family is still like myself, because realistically, like, all this has happened in a month's worth of time. Like, I've been an artist and working in the field for a long time, but to the scale of what is all happening now is very new to me as well. They were just as surprised as me, and there's still all of us wrapping our head around a lot of stuff, especially being here in LA. We had went down to like a lunch or dinner recently, and a couple of people had walked up to me and asked if I was the one who made a friendly reminder. And my parents were like, "What is happening?" um, so that was pretty funny. And then me and my siblings are very, very close, and I think we've all sort of realized is like we all are very successful in our own paths, and we've been able to be super successful about the things that we do. A lot of them are always confused about the work that I do, where it's like, where are you traveling to now? Before the pandemic and everything, I had worked and spoken at an event at Facebook and Instagram, and I had posted some pictures from it. And they're like, how are you just at Facebook headquarters? And so it's things like that where because my field of work is so unknown to a lot of them, it isn't even fair for us to try to compare with each other, because of just the strange scale that we all work and live at. I think the main thing that my family has noticed and is just being conscious of is that my life is very more public than the rest of them. And so that's one thing that we all try to find balance in, even for myself. Like, that's been, especially with everything that's happened, is being able to balance as someone who is always struggling from social anxiety. And I always viewed myself as an artist in the background. I'm a photographer, I'm a filmmaker. I make things, but I never have been the voice for what I make normally. So it's a lot of learning that my life is far more public now, which has been crazy too.
To kind of add on to that is, like, because you've always been behind the camera, but your fame is coming from being in front of the camera. Does that motivate you to continue down this path, or you're like, oh man, how am I going to do this because I actually prefer being behind the camera?
It's a mixture. Like I said, I consider myself a storyteller, and any way that I can share the stories that I want to share is what I'll use. It's the reason why the mediums of what I create are very, very broad. I'm a photographer, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a writer, and the way that I share the stories I want to share just is whatever I find the best way to share those stories. So for my poetry, for example, I've been writing poetry for years, but the best way for me to share those poems is via the platform like TikTok, where I'm able to speak and give my poetry voice, because that's how I write it for. I can't do that on Instagram. I can kind of do that on YouTube. So I am the voice of that story, but that does not mean I'm going to stop working with the people that I work with and sharing the other stories and working to make the documentaries and films that I make, because I feel like those stories need to be shared as well. And I have the ability to make my own voice through the art form. And so the thing that I've been realizing, the thing that I've been lucky enough that the community that I built on TikTok is very, very understanding and very, very open. And it's very vulnerable with each other and with me, is that I've made it apparently clear from the very start of all this, that my TikTok and the page and the platform is a safe place for me and the audience. And if neither one of us feel safe, we won't share. And so I've told on lives and interviews before is there are days that I don't feel like making, and I'm not going to force myself to do that, simply because that does not make me feel safe. And so luckily enough, the audience has been incredibly receptive of that, incredibly understanding, which has been really, really, really cool, especially for my own mental sake. And so I'm excited for everything that this has offered, and for it allowing me to have a voice in an art form that I've normally just done in my free time, because people have known me as a photographer and a filmmaker, not really as an art or as a writer. So like right now, I'm in the process of finally looking truly at a book that I've wanted to publish for years, a collection of poetry. And so being able to finally look at that with my own voice and say, yeah, let's share this, has been really cool. And the audience and the community that's been built around myself and this page has really allowed me to feel that, which has been awesome.
That's incredible. I didn't know that piece about. I mean, I knew that you created your channel as a safe place for yourself, and that you dealt with social anxiety. I hadn't spent too much time in the comments actually reading what people have been saying to you, but. So you're telling me the general response is like they're completely supportive of this. Would you say that's the majority of the response?
It's wild. It's like the community that's on the TikTok, and especially now, like a lot of them are migrating to the Instagram and finding a lot more of like my longer writings and things like that. It's crazy because I grew up on YouTube and I grew up on social media and everything like that. I know the beauty of it, and I also know the double-edged sword of it. I know like how rude and mean and bad comment sections can be, and I was genuinely surprised about how awesome the community was, especially around a friendly reminder, for example. Some of the comments that I would get in were things that people like, oh, this has never been said to me. Like, I've never been told that I'm beautiful or anything like that. And then they would just get flooded with like 30, 50, like 100 comments from complete strangers saying like, since no one's told you, here I am to tell you that you're beautiful. And I was like, this is amazing. And that's been my biggest thing, is like finding a way to continue to tap in with this community of just support and vulnerability for everybody, which has been really, really cool. But yeah, and then even like any sort of things pointed towards me or pointed towards the platform or anything like that has been very positive. I have had very little sort of like hate comments or things like that. I laugh. The most hate comments I've gotten have been about my socks, which has been the funniest thing in the world. And so, because I had walked in my socks or whatever, so they were like slightly dirty. So a lot of the hate comments is like, your socks are dirty, but I love this. And I was like, okay, sick. But it's been, yeah, the community has been absolutely amazing when it comes to just being supportive of me and the things that I do, as well as each other. And I think it has been because they know what this is. I think the audience knows that this is a space for vulnerability. This is a space where I get to be honest with myself and share. I'm not just writing things just to write them, or I'm not just making poetry because I know it will make people feel things. These are pieces and parts of myself that I have felt and that I experience and that I'm put every part of myself in. And I think that's replicated through how I film and how I speak and everything that I do. And so I think that's what's getting to people. And so when they come to the page, they know what they're getting. They know what they're expecting, and they're open to being honest with themselves because of that.
What other kind of surprising experiences or moments or characteristics about your journey on TikTok have you come across similar to what you just described, or was that basically the main?
That's the main one. Outside of that, like I said, so A Fool's Guide to the Universe is the title of the book that I've been working on for the better part of 2.5 years, pretty much. It has been when I really started diving into writing as a way to express myself and what I wanted to do. And so it has been this large collection of poetry for a long time. The thing is that I'm an artist, so I like to perfectionize things, especially when they're my own creations. And so before all of this, the draft document, which I actually see right here, which is the full manuscript of the book, Fool's Guide to the Universe, has sat on this computer for the better part of 6-7 months, never being opened, because I never wanted to look at it, because I never felt like it was something that needed to be heard. I felt like it was just me rambling into the void pointlessly because I was sad. And so it never made sense to me. So I never did anything with it. People have known that I've been writing a book for years, but I never felt comfortable. I never felt okay with it. So I never did anything with it. And so when I started making TikToks, I was like, let's look, and I wanted to find more of my poems that I've written over the years. So I was like, let's look in this manuscript. And so I started looking at it, and I remember finding a friendly reminder and finding that poem and reading it. And I was just like, I really love this poem. And I remember specifically where that poem came from. I was able to find it back, like find the day that it came back inside of the journals. And I remember I was like, okay, let's share this. And I want to speak this. So I set up the camera over there in the corner and just kind of chatted into the void. And I was like, let's do a friendly reminder. So I said it and I voiced it and I loved how it sounded. And I was like, cool, let's share it. And then I wake up the next morning to 350,000 views and continually steadily going up to the point where I had to turn off notifications on my phone. And a ton of the comments were, we need a book, we need a book, we need a book. I want to see more of this in a book. And I laugh because little did everybody who said that know that that poem came from a thing that I've hated looking at for months. And for me, that was incredible and crazy because it finally gave some sort of clarity to what I had been feeling all the time, which was people don't want this. People could care less about something like this. And that wasn't the truth. That people wanted to feel like this.
Who's your demographic? Are they tend to be younger people, or is it like across the board?
It's across the board. I've had people all the way from like 12 message me to like 85.
And these are the people that are like throwing love at someone in the comments who's like, I've never been told I'm beautiful. It's across the board.
It's across the board.
That's beautiful.
There was one person who, I remember her bio specifically. It said like mother of three, and she had made a comment about like, it has been years since anyone's ever told me I'm beautiful, and there's probably the better part of like 85 to 100 comments directed back towards her. And I was like, yeah, that's crazy, where you're able to realize that this little poem that I wrote when I was struggling through a pseudo breakup and loss of somebody that I really, really cared about, and not knowing how to look at myself in the mirror, and this little poem that I thought just meant the world to me, meant the world to the better part of 12 million people now. And so at that point I realized is like, there's so much inside of a fool's guide to the universe. Sorry, my brain's getting wired. There's so much inside of a fool's guide to the universe that are like that and are moments like that. And I want to be able to share those. And so that's what's pushed me to, I just finished writing a note from the author for the book, and being able to look at that and having members of the community reach out and say, hey, I'm an English professor. If you need somebody to edit a book for you, please let me know. It's, hey, I work with this publishing company. We would love to be able to see possibly getting able to work with you and publishing a book. And it's like, at that point, you're just, what is happening? Is so much happening, which has been crazy.
You know, it's just exciting is that it's just the beginning for you, man. This is what, like a month and a half in or 2 months in.
Yeah,
that's
what I said earlier, is like we always don't understand how long a year is. It's like all of that from, I think before Friend Reminder happened, the channel was probably at like maybe just over like 1,500 people. And then this morning it's at just over 300,000 people.
And that's in how long again?
That's in a month. Like literally, I think today's the 24th.
Yeah, 26th.
Friendly Reminder was 26th. So a Friendly Reminder was posted today.
Wow.
It was posted on the 26th of April. Yeah.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. Or 26th of March. And so yeah, so it's exactly a month. So from 1,500 people to 300,000 people on just that platform alone. Instagram went from like 1,800 people to now just a little bit over 1,500 people. And it's been crazy. It's that like, it's been able for me to share parts of myself that I normally didn't think that were needed or worthwhile sharing. And being able to interact with people from all over the world. I laughed at, because I posted a friend reminder so late, because like I would just post it, like obviously like I just wasn't really thinking anything like that would happen. So I posted it probably at like midnight Pacific Standard Time. So the first people to reach, the first like demographic that a friendly reminder reached was actually UAE and Saudi Arabian TikTok, and it was insane and incredible getting to have these messages from people from across the world saying like, you are blowing up here, and I'm talking to like all my friends about this video that we saw, and that was like crazy. So the first like 300,000 views is from people all over the Middle East and Northern Africa and everywhere in between, which is crazy. And then now,
what does it feel like knowing that you're touching people? You're not just it's not like a funny thing. It's like, it's not a funny viral video that people take in and they laugh with their buddies. And then like 2 hours later, it's like they forget about it. What does it feel like to touch people in a deep way? So much so that they're like, I got to share this with the people that I care about because it's so profound.
That is, for me, that has been the most incredible part of it. Is outside of the strangers supporting one another inside, like complete strangers supporting outside in the comments, the other thing that's impacted me the most has been a friendly reminder has like probably the better part of like 4 million likes. But for me, I think it's over 1 million shares as well. Like I can see that metric, right? And so the fact that people are taking the time to share this to somebody that they care about, somebody that they most likely view in this beautiful way, but know that they don't view themselves that way, is the most impactful thing to me, because that means that people are taking 60 seconds of time to remind each other that they're loved. And that is the most insane thing to me. The video has been translated in probably the better part of like 20, 30 different languages, because I can see when people mention me and stuff, and I never know what they're saying. And I always think that like, the thing I've started looking, I basically start looking for the word dog or puppies. And that's like what I've been trying to find. It's like, it's like if I can hear them say puppies in their language, then I know that they're translating the poem. And so it's been translated in the better part of like probably over 20, 30 languages, which has been crazy. People like taking the time to truly like type out and translate the words and everything like that, like transliterate it. And just knowing that this English poem, this poem written in English, spoken in English and everything like that, has people willing enough to put in the time to translate it so that people who don't speak English can understand it and feel with it, is crazy. It is really, really amazing and really, really awesome.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I have been talking to several other people on the podcast, all of them predominantly well-known on TikTok. The feedback I get from them is that they're more in favor of TikTok because they feel like they can be more genuine. They feel like they can be more candid, and that is celebrated on the platform. Without throwing too much shade, they're less into Instagram because it's more about showcasing something that may not be as genuine. There's a lot of people on there who are fabricating content on there to make it seem like they have a certain lifestyle. Do you agree with kind of that viewpoint? And then two, how does that make you feel, man? Like knowing that people are celebrating imperfection, and that's actually what's going to kind of propel people on TikTok.
Yeah, I entirely agree with it. I've always called Instagram the sort of highlight reel of our lives. There's a reason why, like, I always joke to my friends that I gave up on the Instagram algorithm a long time ago, because everything that my posts are, even though I've been sharing my photography, sharing my films on Instagram for a very long time, everything my posts are go ideologically different to what you're told is going to be successful on the platform, because that's never been my art style. I don't use hashtags on Instagram. I don't use like any of that sort of platform stuff. If you look at my Instagram post, they are the photos, the moments shared there, and then these really long storylines that I like to call my postcards from my travels. They are things that I'm feeling. They are moments that I've shared, experiences I had, and they're normally like the better parts of like 5-6 paragraphs long. And everyone who's followed me has always known that, and they've always come for that. But it never has gotten past like 2,000 followers, simply because of reasons like that. But I always knew to myself I wanted to share these stories and I wanted to share them in my own way, whether it was quote unquote successful or not. And that's fine for me. TikTok has been incredible because absolutely the platform is built for people to be open and people to be organic and feel and raw and emotive, for people to have fun, for people to be honest. And the community, like I said, has supported that and has really advocated for stuff like that, which has been really cool because I think, like I said, social media is this double-edged sword. It is something that can connect us across the world, but then also put us in this giant feedback loop of likes and shares and comments and everything like that. I think TikTok is amazing because you're able to interact with so many people on a very different level than you do on Instagram. And I think that's what people have been noticing, and that's something that I'm well for. And I think platforms like Instagram and like Twitter and all the other platforms should take notes from TikTok and allow their creatives and their artists just to do what they want and create what they want and allow them to be advocated for that, which has been really cool. And so I definitely agree with it. And for me, even though I still use Instagram for me has become just a better way for me to connect with the people from TikTok. Realistically, I can update Instagram with stories and captions like that way more fluidly than I can on TikTok. So I point a lot of people over to the Instagram so that they're able to interact with me. I recently just got back from a trip to Missouri to see a family friend and work on an event. And I kind of kept up with Instagram the whole time that I was there, where I was sharing and posting what was going on when I was having coffee and things like that. So I use Instagram now really just as a tool of connecting the audience more than I do for a growth tool, which I think Instagram has advocated for people to try to use it for. And that's why you have this sort of super polished, super meticulous art style, everything like that people try to do on Instagram, versus TikTok can be way more raw. The way I can example it is my friends who are writers, we have a term that we say to each other whenever we perform spoken word poetry or share our art, which is show me the edges of your human. Show me the fabric of yourself, basically, which is when we say show me the edges of your human, we mean show me the raw, the battered and bruised, show me every part of it. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see polish. I don't want to see this weird interpretation of beauty. I want to see you crying. I want to see you feeling. I want to see all of that. And when I have the opportunity to show you my parts of my human, I'm going to share it with you too. So.
I love that. So when you're creating all this content, your videos, your photos, your poetry, I talk to a lot of our guests about joy, finding joy in what they do. Is it one of those things where once you start going, it's 2 hours feels like 10 minutes?
No, absolutely. If you can, when an artist can get into a flow state, when you can find flow, and I find it in so many ways, whether it is like when I'm on set or when I'm filming, when I'm like in depth in writing, or even when I'm editing. Unlike a lot of people who work in the film and the cinema industry, I love editing and I love it because there's a certain point of time. And for me, it's often found at like 12:30 at night with like my lamp and one of my other lamps on, but not like my main lights or anything. But there's like that 12:30 period of time where my fingers no longer are thinking with my brain. They're just flowing, and it's just pure flow state. And an edit can be done in instants, and like it just works. And I think for every artist, we have that flow state when we're just moving at like this sort of amazing pace where we're just feeling it. And we may not think of it as joy. People may interpret it as stress. People may interpret it as like just going with it because there's no other option. But I think for every single one of us, there is a moment of flow that is just beautiful. I remember I had worked on a project with an organization called Haiti Partners, which is an organization that helps run 6 educational schools in Haiti. And I got brought on as their creative director for their first ever virtual event. And it was something that they had never done, and they were trying to figure it all out. And I had a lot of background in virtual hosting, things like that before. So I helped them build this. And we had worked for months on this project, and it finally came to right before the event. It's like an hour before we opened the doors, and we already had like nearly 1,000 people RSVP, and there was nearly like the better parts of like hundreds of thousands of dollars in sponsorships and investment, everything like that. And there came a point where it was like, this is a show. We can't back out. We can't do anything. We can't close doors. We just got to let it run. And so I'm working in the background, putting the slides up, making sure that videos are playing, all this sort of stuff, not thinking about time, not thinking about anything, just in pure, let's do this flow. And then I remember the show ending and like everything closing, and we finished that, and like we were about to go to like our wrap-up meeting with just the team. But I remember closing the doors to the actual event and just like falling back in my seat, and just being like, yeah, we did that. And like that is the most amazing thing, is like I think every artist has had a moment where they're just like going, and they finally get to the end of what they were trying to do, and they just sit back and they're like, yes, that happened.
I love that so much. I love that. All right, man. Well, thanks so much. What can we look forward to in the future from you? Are you going to stay on TikTok? Are you going to try to blow up your YouTube page? Or
yeah, so TikTok will still be going. I still love creating for that platform, and I still love doing that. It's going to be a lot of migration between the two. The goal is to start doing a bit more on YouTube as well, finding ways to share a bit more longer form stuff.
Is it the same handle for YouTube?
Yes, it will be the same handle for YouTube. I luckily have a very unique name handle, so I can have it same across the board. So Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, everything is all the same. It's at The Mind of Soul. And then a book. The book has been the main project right now. I don't know a time frame on it, but I really want to get it out soon. There's just a couple of things that I want to clean up and move around, and a couple of new poems I want to introduce that have been written past all this that I think are pretty impactful to me. And so a book will be coming soon, and that will be shared on all the platforms as well, which I'm really excited for.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much, Donovan. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Take care.
Awesome.